All right. Welcome one, welcome all. I am very sorry about not getting out these reviews in time, and now we have a whole new chapter, and then I'm going to read the chapter for another video. But right now we have to talk about 939 and 94D for the review. So let's get right into it. So the cover page of 939 is Jinbei getting a haircut, and I don't know if Oda is alluding to Jinbei still being alive, or if this happened just because it was a fan request. So we're trying to figure out which one's which. And then for the intro of 939, before we get to the Luffy fighting scenes and his, I'll talk about later, future sight, and I put air quotes for a reason, and I will delve into it a little bit later. We get some dialogue between Komurasaki and Zoro, and basically all Komurasaki does is she translates the information that, yes, she's actually Hiyori, and that she's Momo's younger sister, that there is a whispering of the rebellion coming back from Wano, so she figured that Momo was there, and then we get the confirmation that Kawamatsu is a Kappa, and a lot of people have said that Komurasaki is the new Pudding, and that she'll fit that role within the Wano arc, but I think it's a little bit different, because I don't see her as double-faced or two-sided. I realistically more see her as a young girl who lost her whole entire family due to murder, and she's been really anxious and nervous like for 20 years, having no clue that they actually got sent to the future and that they would come back, and she's just actually elated for them to be back. So I think that's more along the lines of Komurasaki's character. I don't think she's gonna betray anyone. I could see like a plot twist coming up with Komurasaki being not necessarily evil, but her actually being somewhat mischievous, because it's alluded to later in the chapter that for 7 years, I think, because 13 years ago Kawamatsu got captured. For 13 years she was being kind of like a thief, and then that's how she turned into the most beautiful courtesan, and so she kind of has like these few like mischievous quirks about her, but I really don't think that she's going to be that evil. And then after we get that, we get the confirmation that Kawamatsu actually is a Kappa, and you could have figured that out from his laugh from like 2 or 3 chapters ago, but it was actually just confirmed. And then the thing that I was confused about is I think there's 3 retainers for Odin and 3 retainers for Momo, whereas Odin's retainers were Ashura Doji, Denjiro, and Kawamatsu, whereas Momo has Raizo, Kinemon, and Kanjuro, and then I think the other 3 9 red scabbards are for Komurasaki, so, or Hiyori, we're going to call her Hiyori from now on. So that's Okiku, I forget, I'm going to have to look at the chapter in a second, but I'll figure that out. And then we move forward to the Luffy training section, and I'm going to have to actually scoot over here and find the panels where there's a couple of things. Oh yeah, before we get to there, we get a side storyline of the Resetsu district, the prison, and this is where a lot of rebellion against Orochi goes. This is just where they have before they throw him into Udon, which we'll discuss in the next chapter review of the video. And basically all we see is a bunch of people getting thrown in there, a bunch of people who are angry, and then we see Beppo got smoked. And going back to what Law said a couple of chapters ago, I really do believe that Law is just done with the Straw Hat shit, because his crew is getting smoked on their actions because of this leaked plan. And then on top of the leaked plan, we still don't know who the traitor is, and we're about to figure that out probably within like the next 2 chapters past 941. And then we skirt on over to the Udon prison, and we get introduced to Madillo Man, and everyone's been making fun of his baby dick leg coming out of a shell, and I don't blame him because that thing looks funny. Then we get a line from Kawamatsu, and he says, "I want to sumo wrestle too," which to me means that Kawamatsu is just ready for the smoke. Like, he's been locked up for so long, like he's just itching to get into a fight, and I think that's a part of his personality, is he's more of an enjoyer of the fight rather than like this brutal mercenary. And then with Medio Man and his 2 pistols, he says, "This is the end of the line for you two. We have sea stone bullets made exclusively in the Wano country." So this confirms that sea stone bullets are actually a real thing within the One Piece world, which is really cool for me. Because if you go back to what Doflamingo was doing, is he was getting these weapons and selling them to Kaido. And along with that, even if he was selling those, or Doflamingo was one of the biggest black market dealers for arms and ammo, you would think that Dofi had sea stone bullets and he could be selling them back to the world government. So I'm trying to figure out who has like a major gun style from the world government and all of the Marines. And I can't think of any off the top of the head, but that implies that the world government probably has sea stone bullets. And then just a side note from that is Ben Beckman probably has sea stone bullets because he's on Shanks' crew, and why wouldn't he? And then everyone's freaking out because they're thinking that the match is going to end too quickly with Medillo Man shooting all the bullets at him. But Luffy bosses up, and you get like this sick panel where Hio's kind of like just waltzing around, and Luffy goes like this, and he's smiling, and he's telling Gramps like, good job. And the bullets are flying like right through his arms, which is part of the pretense of Luffy's future sight. And this is where we get into the future sight kind of topic about how Luffy and how he's doing it right now. Go back to the video so I can see myself talking. So, to break it down, right? Katakuri saw the defined future for a couple of seconds ahead of time, if not a longer period of time, and he could accurately predict what Luffy was going to do during the fight. Now, if you transfer this over, Luffy is accurately seeing the future and instructing, he's coaching Gramps what to do, Grandpa Hio. And so the only slight difference that I can say is that I personally believe that this is future sight, but it's not as honed to the ability of Katakuri. And I think we're just seeing the glimpses of it. So when Rayleigh said that your Haki blooms in major fights, this isn't a major fight, but this is the perfect chance for him to train it. And then later on in the chapter, we get the revelation that Hio could do the flowing water style and shoot Haki out of his hand. But I think this is a good step for Luffy. I know a lot of people were really mad about it, but if he is going to end up becoming the king of the pirates, it would make sense for him to start implementing the techniques that he learned in the previous arc right away. And one of the first foreshadowings we had of Luffy using the future sight is when he washed up on the beaches of Wano Kuni, and there's those two snipers behind him, and he was all, pow! And smacked him without even looking. So like he could tell or he could sense what was happening. And there's no clear drawing style of Luffy seeing the future like in the Katakuri fight where we had that panel and it was kind of grayed out and you see all these flowing hands like about ready to punch him and Luffy started dodging him, then he got hit every once in a while. We don't have a clear drawing style of that actually happening, but I think this is the very beginnings of Luffy's future sight and how he masters it. And then Gramps asks him a couple of questions and he goes, oh, young boy, you can see the future? And then Luffy's just kind of avoiding the question and saying, this is what you should do, this is what you should do. And then we get to the point where Luffy is trying to hit Medillo Man, but he's stopping his punches short because his Haki isn't coming out like the deflection, reflection, laser beam of what he wants. And so he comes back and he says, no, I did it wrong. This is just normal armament. And then Medillo Man and Gramps are both wondering what's happening during the fight and why Luffy is pulling his punches. And then Gramps keeps saying, I don't know why you are pulling your punches short. And then he goes on to ask Luffy what he's trying to do. And Luffy has like this flashback of Rayleigh and Sentomaru and says, I've seen it before and it's still color of armament Haki, but this Haki you speak of, what must be outsiders call it? And so Hio is about to drop the revelation of the Wano's version of Haki and how he can flow it. And then we scoot towards the end of the chapter and you get this sick panel of Hio molly-whopping Sheep Man, Llama Man, whatever his name is. And Luffy is saying, he deflected it, can you teach me, can you teach me? And that's about to wrap up most of the major points for chapter 939. And right now we're going to get into 940. All right, on to 940. And the chapter is called The Spark of Rebellion. And in hindsight, it's just the rebellion for Wano. And we learn on later in the chapter why there is still a spark considered for the rebellion. But I think it's subtle foreshadowing for Law leaving, like his rebellion against Luffy. Because the very first panel is Law leaving from the Ibisu town, and he says, "I won't forgive you for doubting my comrades. Alliances without trust might as well not exist. There's no way I can leave this in your hands." Law is pissed, and I don't upset him, or I don't blame him. I don't upset him. I don't know why I said that. And so Usopp and Nami are talking about it, and there's just like a casual conversation, and Usopp saying like, "Oh, if I was captured, I wouldn't last 3 seconds," and I think that just goes to show like how much more trusting. No, I don't know. It's weird, like how more trusting crews are intermediary within themselves than they are with other crews. So like, everyone on the Straw Hats trusts Luffy with their life, and everyone from the Heart Pirates trusts Law with their lives. But when you mix the two together, and Law doesn't necessarily trust Luffy all the time because he just goes in guns blazing, right? That in turn makes the Straw Hats kind of question Law, because they have more loyalties to Luffy than they do Law, even though they're in alliance going for the same goal. So I think Law is gonna leave the alliance after Wano Kuni. I don't necessarily think he's gonna backstab Luffy. I don't see it like that. I see Law more as the Whitebeard to Luffy being Roger, where they have this admiration and respect for each other, but they're on opposite sides. So we kind of get that in the beginning, and then we get a little introduction to Bingo Bongo Bungo, and they're not necessarily the most important characters in the chapter. I think they're just a little backstory for the Flower Capital itself, because it goes on to say that one of the three would start fires, the second one would like make caskets, and the third one would like sell the caskets and stuff like that. So the only question that I really have is, these were very big supporters of Orochi, even though they ended up giving all their money to Hiyori when she was the courtesan's Komurasaki. But it just really goes to show like how many people like Bingo, Bongo, and Bungo are in the Flower Capital, and how many people Orochi has that are making money underneath him and then giving it back to him. And then you have the old lady explaining that they gave everything they had to the courtesan and went bankrupt in the process. I suppose there's a god after all. So everyone's excited that they're having like a rough time, because they were giving so many different people rough times. And Tony Yasu is taking care of them, and even though they're total assholes, Yasu's way putting up with it. And then we get a couple of panels between Frankie, Sanji, Shinobu, Konjuro, and I think that's Okiku. And they're talking to Yasu, and he states, "It is true that this card made us aware of the final battle, but that was to be expected, I suppose. It ended up being distributed into the enemy's hands as well, so the plan has been ruined. Yes, you're right." And he goes on to say, "Oh, you could say it's just a prank, but nobody's going to believe it. On that note, I did not know about the waning crescent moon tattoo on the ankle. I am sure that there are others who do not know of it as well. Will you please pass on a message from me to Kinemon and the others? I will absolutely fight alongside them. I am going to be busy. I wonder where I should start. There are many people from here who will die from starvation before the final battle in 1 week's time." So after that, he bounces, and within this dialogue, there's this sentence, and he says, "I didn't know about the waning crescent moon tattoo, so there must be other people," which goes on to say that he might not have been, not a retainer, but like an ally from Jump, right? So we learn later in the chapter that he sells Otoko, his daughter, to the Flower Capital to work for Komurasaki Hiyori, and then all the money that she makes comes back to Yasu, and then Yasu feeds the town and helps everybody out. But would he know about the rebellion through Otoko from Komurasaki telling her about it? Because if he didn't know about the tattoo, that's a very integral part to the whole entire thing. That's how people can tell that they're a part of the alliance to take down Kaido and Orochi. And if he doesn't know about the tattoo, where does he get his information from? So Yasu has like a couple of different routes that he can take for the story. Is he can either be the traitor, which would in turn make Toko the traitor, because Hiyori's telling Toko, who's telling Yasu, and then it would all go up in flames. So he, in the next following panel, says, Konjuro and Shinobu say, "Oh, we don't know him, we don't recognize him, he was just so nice." So this could be a lead for him being the traitor. Or the second thing that could happen is, because Otoko is really Hiyori's only friend in the Wano Kuni area that we've seen so far, besides her family being like Kondro, Raizo, Kimon, Momonosuke, the 9 Red Scabbards, everybody, all that, right? Is he could have just learned about the rebellion through her and not have known what had happened because he could have been misled by the information that Orochi gave out after Odin's death. So they get to chit-chatting, and then you see Yasu kind of just going around the town, and he's handing out like a bunch of W's for everybody. He's feeding them, getting them medicine, getting them like all kinds of stuff, like fixing their backs. And then everyone calls him the Saint. I gotta scroll to the next one. So it says, although he might act like a clown most of the time, he has been loved by everyone in this town for a long time now. He is our saint. So if he's been doing this for a while, and Toko's been sending him the money, it could be like a Robin Hood-esque thing, and we know of the Witching Hour boy. So if 2 and 2 work out together, he could be a candidate for it, but I'm not sure. I'm going to have to read 941 because all I've been hearing is good things on Twitter lately. And then we go back into the Udon prison, and now this time Luffy isn't holding back his punches. So we get the revelation from Hyo that Wano has its own name for it. And he says, what you outsiders call Haki is known as Ryu Owu, I think, here in the Wano country. It focuses on the concept of flow, and flow is capitalized and bolded. So the way that I see it is Luffy talks about his armament being heavy and it being black and vulcanized, whereas Rayleigh's was very light to the touch, and he can kind of like move super like a feather with it, right? So I think Hyo teaching Luffy about the flow of Haki and teaching him this deflection reflection technique makes a lot more sense because he can practice it in the present time, right? Rather than just relying on plot armor and Rayleigh telling about it in a flashback. And then we just get a bunch of panels of just of Luffy whooping ass, and none of his punches are being held. Like, he is just going after it. And you know he's putting everything into it, so the punches are really going to hurt. And then the interesting thing about Queen is that all he's doing is eating the Yoshiriku because he says that it wouldn't be fun to end this, and so he calls it off. And like I said in earlier reviews, Queen is a little too lackadaisical for this, being the left-hand man of Kaido. You'd imagine that he would be all about the torture and just kicking ass and taking names, but he just kind of lets Luffy chill and practice on his own and get his Haki up. And then, but the plan is that they weren't going to feed Luffy along the death match. And then once Queen leaves, we get a bunch of guards around Luffy, and Hyo says, can I ask you something, Straw Hat Man? And then we get a Conqueror's panel. So Luffy's Conqueror is just really getting up there. And then Luffy explains about like the Yonkos and then his dream of wanting to be the Pirate King. And Hyo, that we learn in these next few panels, has a what do you call it, a backstory? Has ties to Roger. Because he says, you knew Goldie Roger? Yes, a long time ago when he came to this land. Kinemon told me about that. And then this is where we start getting the revelations that Luffy is associated with the ninja and the samurai of Wano, and he's helping them out, and Hyo doesn't really know about it. And so Hyo thought he was going to die this whole entire time without seeing anybody again. And so Raizo shows up with Caribou, Raizo shows up within Caribou's pocket swamp dimension, and he says, I can't believe that's the Hiroguro of the past. I never thought I'd see you again. And so the way that age works for men in One Piece primarily is like they shrink, right? So anytime you see a shrunken character, you should assume that they may not look the same as they did in the past. And it's just kind of like a side note for me, just to like think about it all the time, because you got that panel of Hyo looking like what's the fire god? I forgot the fire god's name from Japanese mythology, but he looks like that. He looks like the Fugo. Oh well, I'll look it up in a second. But Caribou asks, "Let me retreat with you and let me get on your ship." Luffy says, "Have you changed?" Yeah, and then Caribou says, what is he trying to trick me? That was too easy. I'm even more scared of him now. Caribou's up to no good. So Caribou knows about Poseidon. I think he has some intel on Kaido, and all he wants to do is escape with his life, so he can probably make more use of it in like a dirty, slight-handed way. So I hope by the end of the arc that Luffy or Zoro or Sanji or someone who's from the main cast kicks Caribou's ass, because I honestly just don't like Caribou. And then we get a little bit more information about Hio knowing about the 9 red scabbers, and then we get to one of the, I'm going to say, biggest plot armor ass pulls that I've ever read from One Piece, is that Udon Prison is known for having prisoners that rebel against Orochi. So, he says, if I can talk to all the Yakuza bosses of old, all the old Yakuza bosses that used to basically work for Hio, and all of their underlings, right, are in Udon Prison, he's going to ask them to fight for Luffy, because Luffy is the one who can help change this country, and with like his group and everything. And then he says, I got tens of thousands of people in here. Like, there's this whole setup where it's like block, 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 block. And all of those blocks have a bunch of prisoners in them who are just rebelling against Orochi. And then we get the last panel of Kawamatsu, and we still don't know his design, but we know that he's a Kappa. And then from last chapter, you saw that he's like maybe like 4 feet tall. Like, he's a short Kappa. But Raizo says, we absolutely need to break him out. This is the man that we need most. So I think, I don't know how to scale Ashura compared to, like, let's say commander level, but he's roughly like around here because he was taking on Jack, right? So they all might be like under 3rd commander level, and Kawamatsu is being portrayed to be of that power level too. So it's going to be interesting to see like what he actually does. And then we wrap up the chapter, and Charlotte Lin is pulling up to Udon, and we'll probably get a fight with her breaking down walls and all that kind of stuff, but I'm not too excited about her being there. Thank you guys. Sorry for all the late reviews. I promise. Once I move to Oregon, it's going to be a lot easier because I'm going to have a lot more time on my hands, and summer's coming up, and I can crank out videos because all I have to do is work, and I don't have to work and go to school and make videos, and I know this should be a priority, but I got to figure out how to make my time right. So thank you. Please subscribe. Please like the video. Comment. And I'll see you guys for the 9:41 live reaction after I render and edit this and put a couple of pictures in there, and I'll see y'all soon.